Welcome to EcoView. Today we're turning our attention to one of the most frequent and devastating natural disasters in the world, flood. Flood are often seen as just a natural occurrence of heavy rain, but they are increasingly a story about human decisions, our climate actions, and also our changing climate, our urban planning, and also our relationship with water bodies are all contributing to the rising tides. I am Paul Oladbupo. Once again, you're welcome to EcoView. So basically, a flood occurs when an overflow of water submerges land than dry land, the normal dry land that we usually will have. This can happen in various ways. There's a river flood, which happens when the river and also streams flow overflow their banks, and also there's a polar flood, or also known as the flash flood, which occur when intense rain overwhelms the drainage system. And then there are the coastal floods, which are caused by storm surge from things like hurricane or rising sea levels. So basically, these consequences and all of the things that are left behind are usually very much catastrophic. Flood can cause widespread of damage, including loss of life, destruction of homes, and collapse of infrastructures. But beyond the immediate devastation, flood also pose a serious threat to public health. It contaminates water supply and creating breeding ground for more diseases. To help us understand the complexity of this, we'll be joined by Benson Aboro, who is a disaster management officer at the Nigerian who is the director of disaster management at the Nigerian Red Cross Society national headquarters here in Abuja. He has dedicated his life to all of these things and helping people who are in need, especially when they are in times of disaster. After this break, we'll be joined by Mr. Benson. The Gwen will be right back.
Internet of Things, IoT. The Internet of Things, IoT, is all about creating a connected network of physical devices, from smart refrigerators to industrial sensors that collect and exchange data. IoT applications are driving efficiency in industries like healthcare, manufacturing, and transportation, but security vulnerabilities are a growing issue. With more devices getting connected, cyber attacks targeting IoT systems have surged. Despite these challenges, the IoT market is forecasted to reach $1.6 trillion by 2025, making it a pivotal technology in smart homes, cities, and industrial processes.
Yeah, welcome back. Joining us now is the Director of Disaster Risk Management, Mr. Benson. Good morning to you, sir. How are you doing?
Paul, it's a pleasure to join you on this program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I would love to understand, as a disaster risk management officer that you are, what are those things that you found as the most important factors that you believe are driving the increased severe flooding events that we're having in Nigeria, in some parts of the Sahel region, and also even outside of Africa? What exactly are those things that the leading causes of these floods that we see?
Thank you so much. The causes of flood are not far-fetched. We are all witnessing all that is happening as it relates to climate change. Over the years, we have had the intensity of the rains increasing. We also have also witnessed that the length of the rainy seasons could no longer be predicted. When we were growing up, we could say this is the rainy season and this is the dry season. But now everything seems muddled up. And the scientists tell us that the effects of heat and all that we generate here on the ozone layer have negatively impacted on the environment, and therefore we have more rain. The intensity of the water flow is much. The rivers and dams overflow, and once in a while we have flooding, which is catastrophic effect on human being, infrastructure, and like you earlier mentioned, health and well-being of the citizens.
Okay, yes, I guess you've broken it down a bit. I do understand that there are several types of flood, just as also I've earlier mentioned some of them. But could you help us um, break them with examples, and also cities that might have experienced all of these kind of floods in times past?
For simplicity's sake, we can say that the floods are either flash floods or they are perennial floods, the ones that usually will result as when the river overflow, when dams overflow, or just flash flood when there is rain and after a while it dries up and everything is okay. But the ones that usually will occur as a result of overflow of rivers and dams are usually the ones that are very destructive. They could remain for days, for weeks, for months, as we have seen in the river plains, as we have seen in the course of the river Niger and the Benue down to Lokoja, and then down to the creeks of the Niger Delta. Year in, year out, Nigeria suffer a lot of losses, I mean, resulting from perennial floods. They have been so bad that we have lost a lot of human lives, and critical infrastructures have been damaged in the course of floods. And the Nigerian Red Cross, joining other well-meaning organizations, have always tried to make sure that we are able to reduce the losses that we occur annually from flood.
Okay, sir. I would also want to know that. I mean, you've broken it down, and now we might have an understanding because I guess a city in Mokwa, here in Nigeria, had a very similar experience. But I want to understand how does things like urbanization and also developments all in all of our regions, how does all of these things affect how flood is our cities? Because I also do understand that in places like in urban cities like Lagos, they also experience some kind of flood. So are those things, caused by human developments? Are they the ones that actually directly increase the risk of flood in such communities?
Yeah, we all agree that nature contributes a lot to flooding every year in Nigeria. But again, we know that what we do on a daily basis can also aggravate the effect, the risk that we face as a result of flood. You've not just mentioned Lagos. Lagos is not the only one. I mean, there are other cities where the government, in its wisdom, have planned the city. But in our normal way of life, people begin to build, even in green areas, in waterways. We don't take care of our drainages. We are not mindful of our neighbors. We try to overdo each other by building gigantic buildings without good plans. This again tells much about the humanity in us. And by so doing, when you block waterways, when you don't clear your drainages, you are encouraging flooding. And when it comes, it usually will not select those to affect. It washes away a whole community, like Mokwa you mentioned. It washes away roads. It can even wash away the building that you built on that waterway.
I mean that's a very interesting thing, and also to see how we also have our own role to play in all of this. But let's look beyond the immediate danger, because all of these things that you mentioned as regards loss of property, they seem like things that are immediate dangers. What are those long-term effects on our health, the health of the community members? What are those consequences that it has on the environment, especially when we have major floods like what we had in Mokwa? What exactly are those things that would take a very long time to fix and will cause a very long term effect, harm basically on on those communities hit by such floods?
Thank you. I think we need to look immediately, apart from the immediate damages it caused. Flood washes away a lot of our farmlands, and this on its own can lead to a hunger situation. We all know what we have in this country already. I mean, those who are living below poverty line. Now, this is exacerbated by flooding annually. So it washes away a lot of farmlands. It, if it washes away a community, it means that everything about that community has been moved back by years. mean, people will need to build new shelters or we have to stay in temporary shelters. They will not need to look at new means of livelihood. The children's schooling and their educational pursuit will be hampered. Health facilities will be hampered, and there might be healthcare in danger in those areas. So they are so numerous. Again, you look at the health implication of things. We've had situations where reptiles have come out of their natural domicile to attack people in some parts of the world when there's flood. We had situations where there are epidemic, where waterborne diseases as a result of flood. So these are the areas that we need to look at.
It's really because it shows that during flood, meaning that it's not only human beings that are usually displaced from their habitats, meaning that even animals are also affected one way or the other. But I'll just really quickly want to touch on this particular thing because we are very interested in technologies that are used to predict all of these things. So, what are those technologies that could be used? Because I do understand that in a place like Philippines, for example, there is this siren that comes up once the water levels comes up to warn citizens and also community members to leave or vacate the environment or try to move a bit away from the water bodies around. Do we have any such in play here in Nigeria or also in Africa to warn us as regards flood coming or when to expect flood?
Yes, we do. The government is on top of the issue. I'm sure you know about NASDRA, you know about NIMET, you know
Yes.
about Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NISA. These are agencies established by government to be able to predict to the nearest accuracy of weather conditions. And flood is one of those things that they really zero on. And these predictions are used by government agencies and non-governmental agencies like the Red Cross, like a humanitarian organization like us. We work closely with National Emergency Management Agency, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, and other agencies and meteorological agencies that I just mentioned to be able to predict and then develop anticipatory actions or focus-based activities to mitigate the effect of flood in Nigeria. As we speak, we are being funded in a project by the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Society with the support of the Italian government, where we are working in some selected states, working with the local agencies, the state agencies. We are using water gauge to be able to measure when the tide of the river will rise so that people can move away from such places. We also have other projects we are running with the British Red Cross and other stakeholders to be able to provide some amount of money for people in selected communities with which they can move away from the waterways when these predictions come true from NIMET and NISA for us to utilize.
Okay, now let's look at more solutions that we could actually use to address this situation. And I would love to start from the role of zoning and also urban planning. What's their role in flood mitigation exactly, and why is it so crucial in trying to regulate development, especially in a time like this where there are a lot of flood pains in different cities? I mean, a report recently talked about how 11 states are at risk in the next coming of days as regards flood. So what role do we have? Because there are some places that are yet to be developed, even in cities as well. What are those things that urban planning can do to prevent flood in the coming future so that in the next 10, 15 years, we don't have issues of flood in areas like that?
Well, I like your zeroing on the urban cities, but we know that more flood does more damages in the rural than the urban cities.
Yes, sir.
It's just that in the urban cities, people see it happening live, and the media is there to report on it. But well and good, there are documents, there are proposals, there are plan of actions, there are standard of procedures that have been approved by every organization working with NEMA And the rules are apportioned to each agencies, each ministry, well, just name it. So we know our various rules. The town planners also have their role. The Federal Ministry of Works have their role. The military have their roles to play. And the town planners have been doing their bit. Like I said earlier, we need to obey existing laws. The laws are there. And we should obey them when these agencies come knocking. If you start building a house, for instance, and they come to tell you that you should stop it, stop it. It's for the general good, it's for public good. If there's a waterway and you were not aware, let's assume you were not aware, and the government agencies or whoever is in charge of it, like you talk about the town planning unit, comes to you, you should so stop and obey because it will help everyone. It's for public good. They are doing their bit. They have their guidelines, the laws establishing them, and I think they also need to enforce it the more. Because when you enforce, it serves as deterrent to others not to do the same thing. But I guess too, they also have their limitation. And we should do a lot of awareness creation so that people will not say they are not aware. Although the fact that the law does not exempt you from its consequences. But they need to do more of awareness creation so that the public can know what is right and what is wrong. And we do hope that they will abide by those guidelines.
Okay, hopefully they abide by the guidelines. But I was actually coming to the rural areas because flooding in the cities are kind of most times not expected. But in the in the rural areas, what are those things? What are those structures that can be put in place so that they don't have issues as regards flood? Is there a way that citizens or community members have to relate to government as regards when they want to open the dams or things like that, so that they are aware and they are prepared for such things and probably either have to leave that area for that short period of time until when they are sure that they are safe to go back again? Are there things like that to mitigate so that because the last flood actually took a lot of lives, a lot of properties, and not just that, it cleared about hectares of farmlands because it's usually in the rural areas where we get our food to eat. I mean, this is a picture of a community. I guess this should be more quiet if I'm not mistaken. And it sees how houses are submerged in water, which is a very serious issue. And yet again, we still have more issues like this. I mean, so it's also in the news lately as regards how many hectares of land that the flood has taken over in the last few months. So, sir, also in rural areas, what are these things that can be done to mitigate these issues?
Okay, thank you. As we speak, flood is ravaging Sokoto, part of Sokoto State. You mentioned Mokwa, it was in the news recently. Annually, we know what happens in Lokoja, the confluence town where the River Niger meets the Benue. It
Yes.
happens every sometimes. The one of 2022 was one of the worst, where the road was blocked for days, and we all know what happened. Apart from the lives and property, the economic consequence of that on a nation can just be imagined. This can be averted, this risk can be reduced. For us in the Nigerian Red Cross, we recommend early warning, early action activities. You already talked about predictions and how we can utilize such data to better the lots of our people. For us in Nigerian Red Cross, we do a lot of community early warning activities. As we speak, our people are in some states working with local community, local-led adaptation program to make sure that selected members of the same citizens are trained in particular areas. Take, for instance, if your community is by the river, you should have some people trained on how to swim and also save others. You should also make sure that your boat riders are trained. It doesn't have to be in a class or in a big tertiary institution. You can organize yourselves, invite the Red Cross or similar organizations to come and give you awareness session. Um, they say that people die for lack of knowledge. I mean, these are simple techniques that we can use. You can read the tide. What did we find out in one of the communities? All they did was to get sticks, very long sticks, that they stick into the river with marks. So when it gets to a particular level, they go with their traditional drum and beat it around the community to tell people that, look, the water tide is rising. We need to move from the bank of the river. It's as simple as that. And then from that kind of simplistic level, you begin to develop early warning signs that comes with predictions. Then you go into focus-based solution. You go into anticipatory actions, how you move, where you move to, things you need to do. What do you need to keep in your house so that when the flood start, the tide rise, you can take your bag and move immediately? Where do you move to? What are the designated high ground that people should move to for safety? And then when the water recedes, you can probably go back to your farms. These are things we need to do. And we encourage other organizations to also join the Red Cross and the government to begin to these community-based teams. We call our own community-based emergency first aid. We call it first aid, but it's not just about first aid. We do a lot of search and rescue. We do a lot of casualty moving and handling. We do a lot of resettlement. We do train them how to construct emergency shelter for their own people. We do waterborne operation to train them on how to swim, survive, and help others. These are some of the things they need to look at. And when they are injured, well, first aid comes in. The little help that you can give your neighbor, you can give yourself, or you can give other citizens within your community before taking them to health facilities.
A lot when it comes to helping those who are in need. But I would want to get a professional point of view from you as regards flood mitigation. In your years of practice, what are those things that you've seen as the most effective? I mean, you mentioned that of using the stick, which is a traditional method. And also, is it just a solution or there's just a one-way pattern to it? Or is it combinations of a lot of things, an aggregate of different kind of solutions put in one to ensure that community members are safe at the end of the day?
I prescribe homemade solutions. What works for a community might not work for another community. What works in developed country might not work for us in our own developing country. So
Yes.
we need to sit with the community to determine what best suits them. And that's why I'm always talking about early action, because if you have the predictions, if we are able to disseminate the data that comes from NIMET and NISA and NEMA and the federal ministries and the state ministries, the special duty ministry, whatever nomenclature is given to them at the state level, working with National Orientation Agency, working with community-based humanitarian organization like the Red Cross to be able to disseminate this information. Then we begin to develop mitigating measures. Some people might just decide that all they want to do in the bank of their small river is to get sacks of sand and stone to heap there so that the water does not cross. Others might decide to create a special place on the top of a hill where they will relocate to. Others might decide to stockpile some stock somewhere so that when it happens, they still have something to leverage on. So it depends on what is best for a particular community. But again, when disasters strike, we can mitigate the effect, but there are some you cannot prevent. Could we have prevented Mokwa? What should we as a people, not just government, all of us working together, what could we have done? What can we do about the annual flood that comes, washes all over the countries, from down the borders with Cameroon, down to Taraba, everywhere, and it comes down to the Niger Delta. So we need to build stockpiling, good warehouse management. You should have stock of items that you can use immediately it happened to reduce the effect on our people and the infrastructure that we want to maintain.
Okay, now let's come down now because you've mentioned that it's not just the government that has a role to play in this. We as community members have our roles to it. Every stakeholder has their role to play in it, and most importantly, individuals as well have their role to play in this. So, as individual, probably like just as there's a warning now as regards 11 states that should be on red alert as regards flood. What are those things, what those most essential steps that they should take now at the moment to prepare themselves and also so that they are resilient when the flood comes?
You already have the prediction and you expect the rain to be heavy and maybe longer than necessary. You as a community should come together. You are stronger working together. You should come together not just as individual, but as people of the same community to begin to plan on what to do, when to evacuate. Who are those people within the communities that can help? We've seen situations where one person can save a lot of people, but this needs to be planned and how it should be carried out. And those who have should give those who do not have. I mean, if you're going to move out of a community, what means of transport will you use when the water hits, when the flood hits? Where, what are the routes to be followed? And which place do we use as a safety net that we will come to? And when the water have receded, what happened to the wells from which we drink water? What treatment are we going to give to them?
Exactly.
Who is going to refurbish the boreholes that have been contaminated? What measures are you doing to get agencies like the Red Cross and others to give you things like water treatment tab that you can use momentarily before the water become clean again? What happens to those who have lost their farms and means of livelihood? So you need to plan this. You need to talk to your government, the local government, which is closer to you, the agencies that work within your area, the Red Cross, work with them, the police, the Civil Defense Corps, and everybody. It is a joint work to save life and to make sure we reduce the risk of flood.
Exactly. I mean, I wish we had more time to actually break this down because it's a very interesting conversation and it's a conversation that shouldn't end. But I would love if you could just quickly tell us what are those things that you're open for in the nearest future to happen as regards flood mitigation, anticipatory actions as regards flood, and also sweeping into action even when flood hits some communities. What are those things that you're expecting? If you could just round up in next 1 or 2 minutes, sir.
I do hope that as a country, I do hope that as a people, we will be ready for all eventualities, including whatever disasters that hit us. Our ability to be able to respond promptly and effectively will save lives. And this can only be done if we all put our hands into organizing ourselves into units, into teams that can respond when disasters strike. Let's not wait for disaster. Let's begin to look at focus based actions that we can take to mitigate the effect of flooding on our people, on our environment, and our infrastructures.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for joining. I mean, it was a lovely conversation, and hopefully, one of these days, we'll have you in our studio as well to probably discuss this or more interesting issues as well. Thank you very much for joining. We've been joined.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you,
Yes,
Paul.
sir. Thank you very much, sir. That was Mr. Benson, the director at the Nigerian Red Cross Society, which is a very wonderful one, having a lovely conversation as regards flood. I guess that's how we call it a day today on EcoView. Don't forget that flood will always be a part of life on Earth, but by understanding the complex interplay between our environment and also our choices, we can move from being victims of circumstance to architects of our own resilient future. So whether through large-scale engineering or small-scale preparedness, we have tools to live in harmony with the power of water. These remain EcoView, and do not forget that we're pushing the goals SDG 13, SDG 14, and also SDG 15. And we hope to see you next week for another lovely episode. My name remains Paul Olatupo. Thanks for watching.